Your typical American is trying to get enough money saved up so they can have financial freedom in retirement. An often overlooked component of a good retirement is your health. So what if you were focused on maximizing your health and not your wealth in retirement? Well, if we look at average life expectancies in the United States, they've gone up over the decades. But unfortunately, in some recent studies, it shows that healthy life expectancy has actually gone down. So here's the picture. You work your entire life, you put up with a lot, you sacrifice, and then you get to retirement and you really can't do much, or you're able to do a lot less than you hoped because your health just isn't as good as it used to be. It's more difficult to get on a plane, go travel around when you have doctor's appointments and you have prescriptions that need to be met, and your sleep is messed up, and you have specific nutritional needs that you have to satisfy, all because your health is not where you wanted it to be. So in this video, we're going to look at trying to retire as early as it is financially responsible to do so. And what I have found working with thousands of people, having so many conversations, is that it's actually more realistic and possible than you might think. So let's jump into the numbers, see what the studies are saying, and look at some examples of how somebody might be able to retire sooner than they thought possible. So let's jump right into this video. So here's a table that I was referencing in my introduction, essentially looking at studies that have happened about every 5 years looking at healthy life expectancy. And this particular table is looking at developed countries. So I think this is more fair, looking at comparable countries where you have modern medicine and, the comforts and quality of modern life. And unfortunately, we're standing out, and not in a good way. So if you look at this entire list, if we go over, we look at all the countries here. So we have a long list of countries here and a long list of countries here. And then we have this column is 2010, the middle is 2015, and the one on the far right for both sides is 2019. And you can see that in each of these studies that were done, every single country, that healthy life expectancy has gone up. So, for example, let's just look at the top one here. We have Japan in 2010 was 73. Then in 2015, that healthy life expectancy went up by about half a year to 23.6 years. And then finally in 2019, all the way up to 24.1 years. And it's essentially the same thing across the developed world. Wherever the starting point was, that average healthy life expectancy increased. Now, at the very bottom of this chart, you'll see the United States, the only country in red. And you can see that from each one of these 5-year studies, the healthy life expectancy of your typical American has gone down. So you've worked your entire life, and the traditional retirement age, frankly, is somewhere around 65 to 70 years old. And in fact, those are the years that kind of make sense for retirement, right? At age 65, you qualify for Medicare. At age 67, you qualify for your full retirement benefit for Social Security. I know you can take it sooner. You can also wait to take it until you're 70 years old. But essentially, waiting until you're mid to late 60s to retire kind of lines up and makes sense based on those kind of milestones of retirement. And so here you go. You finally get to that age, and now you've surpassed that healthy life expectancy. And so, although yes, you're probably going to live another 15 to 20 years on average, now your health quality of life for the next 15 to 20 years is significantly lower than it was in the previous 65 years. Well, you might look at this chart and think, well, this is maybe not fair. You're comparing the United States with other developed countries. Surely maybe it's not that bad. I don't know what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to be silly, but I want to show you another chart that actually kind of highlights just how bad this all is. So in this chart, we're comparing the United States against other developed countries. And this is a really interesting map I'll just show you. Essentially, this is from the same study, and highlighted in green are all the countries who, over the last 2 studies, 2010, 2015, 2019, I guess that would be 3 studies. So it's highlighting out of the last 2, however, I guess out of 2019 and 2015, how many of those did not have a decline in that healthy life expectancy. And you can see essentially the entire world is green. Everybody's had improved healthy life expectancy. Yellow are the countries where they had one of the last 2 studies. The healthy life expectancy went down. And I don't know, maybe let's look at some of those countries in yellow. We have Libya, we have Iraq, Syria, Kuwait. I think that's Malaysia, and I believe that little small country right there in Europe is Bulgaria. Then of course we have over here the Dominican Republic. We also have Honduras, Cuba, and I'm not sure where this country is right here at the top of South America, but at any rate, it's maybe not the best cohort to be a part of. Now, well, let's look at the red countries. So the red countries are those that had declining healthy life expectancies over the last 2 studies. Of course, we have the United States, we have our friends down in Venezuela, and we have Yemen. Interesting group to be a part of. The only 3 countries on the planet that have had decreasing healthy life expectancy. Maybe this means we need to change some things. I don't know, the way that we live, our lifestyle, something. Obviously, this is not a great group to be a part of here. Certainly not, what you would want. So with that all being said, obviously, if you don't have the financial means to be able to retire early, and what I mean by that is that you have enough money saved up in retirement or investment accounts, and you've reduced your expenses sufficiently to where you can generate enough income from your assets or income sources to satisfy your living expectations, your living needs, pay all your bills, that sort of thing. Now, the problem is for a lot of people, it's really not possible until they're able to claim Social Security. But if you have money saved, then maybe you can do that before you reach age 65. Is there a way that we can maximize these years before you reach age 65? So I just want to share a retirement plan here for Jeff and Brittany. Now, Jeff and Brittany, Jeff is 60 years old, Brittany is 57 years old. And I'm sharing this example client plan because I think it highlights what for many people would think is not realistic. So a couple of things. Like I said, Jeff is 60, Brittany is 57. They've saved up about $2 million in total retirement savings. Brittany doesn't have a large Social Security benefit, but Jeff has had a higher income and he's worked more years. Brittany stayed home raising children, of course. So he has a good Social Security benefit, but obviously at age 60, he's not able to claim that benefit. With this kind of overall asset, is it possible? Well, there's one kind of glaring issue or thing that concerns them especially, and is really kind of the hang up for them about wanting to work longer, even though they really want to retire. And that's the fact that they still have a mortgage. Now, if they work really, really hard for the next 5 years, they can have it paid off. But, obviously if they retire, they don't know that that's going to be possible. So what I did is put together a early retirement income plan to see what is realistic. What does retirement look like for somebody in their situation? So with that $2 million starting balance, let's look at their annual cash flows. So if they retire in 2026, you can see here that basically for the first couple months of the year, they still have some salary and then they're taking money out of their portfolio. Well, they need about $10,000 a month to cover their expenses. That's including their mortgage payment. Once that's paid off, their monthly expenses will drop by about $3,000 a month. So you can see here that as we go along, for the first 10 years, they don't have any other income sources. It's just taking money out of the portfolio. So it was pretty drastic, right? We're pulling out, somewhere in the neighborhood of $145,000 for the first, and obviously that's going up with inflation. So you can see year by year, get out to 2035, and that year they're pulling out $159,000 to cover their living expenses. And then finally, when Jeff turns 70 years old, that happens to be the way that I modeled out this plan, is that Jeff would actually wait until age 70, which actually to you might sound ridiculous since he's retiring so early to have him wait that long. But I'll just trust me for a minute and you'll kind of see what I'm doing here. So they wait until age 70. Well, once he hits 70, then Brittany will also claim her Social Security benefit. And in this case, it'll be a spousal benefit. And you can see that once their benefits are fully claimed, we'll fast forward 1 year where both of them are on Social Security. Jeff is bringing in about $75,000 a year. And Brittany is bringing in about $42,000 a year. So once Social Security is in play, they still have money in their portfolio, but they don't need it. They're not dependent on it. And from this point forward, they have a guaranteed inflation-adjusted income through Social Security benefits. So pretty nice. But let's run some tests. How realistic is this plan? Does it stand up in good and bad situations? So what we can actually do is run this plan through thousands of scenarios, right? We can only retire. Once you retire, if it's possible, it would be nice if we could stress test that plan through thousands of different scenarios to see just how strong is your plan. And in this case, believe it or not, even though for the first essentially 10 years of their retirement, they're living 100%, they're 100% dependent on their portfolio, still with that mortgage, they actually have a 100% success rate. Now, usually when I work with people, this type of situation where they have a 100% success rate, I actually don't like a plan like this. What this actually tells me is that probably they can either retire even sooner, they're already 60 and 57, so that's not an option. Potentially they could have retired sooner, or another way to look at this is that they can actually have more income on a monthly basis than what we're planning for. So they need $10,000 a month, but maybe we should run some other scenarios. What if we did $11,000 or $12,000 a month for the first 5 years or 10 years? So they could have extra money for travel or for other things that they'd like to do, especially since they're prioritizing their health and their lifestyle. So they're going to want to do things, obviously. So with this scenario, we'll just leave it here for now. They have a 100% success rate, which is pretty incredible. I think a really important thing to look at as well is that where is their portfolio kind of projected to be, because we're starting out living off of it 100% for 10 10 years. Well, same thing. We've looked at the need for them to take income adjustments. And, based on the stress test, it's not likely that they'll ever have to have a drop in income to stay on track. But we can actually look at their portfolio over time. And I'm going to kind of just draw your attention here to this table here below. We have this line graph up above. But the median outcome, same things, thousands of scenarios. What's most typical is that actually after about 38 years of retirement, they end up passing away with about $6.5 million. Now, obviously, it could be better than that or worse than that, depending on how the market goes and everything. But starting out at the beginning of retirement, this is a very strong plan. And really, it would be difficult to mess this up. It really just means that we need to have a disciplined investment approach to manage sequence of return risk. We need to have a plan to take care of their health insurance so that they can save money and keep more of those dollars, or on the other hand, not have to take out as many dollars from their portfolio so they can have, affordable health insurance, which is something that can be accomplished for an early retiree. And then, of course, we need to look at tax planning. They've spent all this time saving up this money. So what's the most efficient way to take out this money? So, of course, they can use more of it and keep more of it and direct it towards the things that are most important to them. Kind of interesting. I don't always do this in my videos, but it's an interesting feature of my planning software. We can actually take a look at specific historical examples to see how their plan would have worked out. So right now, it's kind of interesting. There's higher inflation in the United States than we've seen maybe in the last 10 years. Over the last, let's call it 5 years, inflation has been higher. Also, kind of internationally, we're dealing with disrupted oil supplies across the globe. So are there any historical parallels to that, to, kind of some of what we're facing right now? And I would say yes. The scenario I like to look at, or the historical parallel that I like to look at, is going back through what's called the Stagflation era, which is essentially the late 1960s up through the early 1980s. So we had high government spending, similar to today. You had spending during the Vietnam War. You also had expanded domestic benefits through some of the legislation put forward by President Johnson. And then also, of course, you had, in the 1970s, you had the U.S. oil embargo, which disrupted international oil supplies. So there are some similarities to today. Well, what if we could look specifically at their retirement plan if they had retired right at the beginning of this really nasty stagflation era? Well, thankfully, we can actually do that. So here you can see this shaded area below. This indicates their planned income, how much they need. And the blue line is their actual income. You can see all of these dotted lines, all these blue dotted lines here. And the reason why we have all these blue dotted lines is because we have to plan for inflation adjustments, inflation adjustments basically every year during this era because there was high inflation. Okay, so we need extra dollars just to meet their spending needs in retirement. And then, of course, these green dotted lines, what this is referring to is when their portfolio actually hit a high enough level to where on a go-forward basis, we could project that they could actually have more income than we initially proposed. Eventually, just kind of take maybe an absurd scenario. You started with $2 million. Let's say your portfolio grew to $10 million. Well, if that were the case, you'd probably say, hey, I can increase my spending. Now, that's obviously an extreme example, but essentially that's the idea, is that if you're going along and your portfolio hits a certain level, as a retiree, you've earned that money. And so it's completely possible to actually increase your monthly spending on a go-forward basis. And that's what these green lights indicate. Their portfolio hit an upper level to where it was realistic for them to increase their spending going forward. And so you can see actually they hit several of those. If we look at their portfolio balance, kind of interesting. You can see the blue line down below in this chart indicates their portfolio level, and the green and the red shaded areas, these are the upper and lower guardrails. Very simply put, if they hit the green, if their portfolio actually goes into the green area, it means, hey, we can actually have higher income on top of inflation adjustments than we initially planned on. And on the flip side, if their portfolio goes into the red area, that's kind of like hitting a guardrail and saying, oh, we need to make a small adjustment to stay on track. You don't have to go back to work. We don't have to cancel your retirement or something like that. You don't need to move into your kid's basement or something. But what this means is probably a small adjustment in your retirement spending to stay on track. And you can see that essentially, even during the stagflation era, this particular plan is in great shape. They actually never hit a bottom guardrail. And in spite of the low growth and the high inflation, their portfolio kind of works out and in fact actually grows quite a bit and ends up much higher than where we started. Bringing everything back together, when you're looking at your retirement, you need to think about your wealth, but also you need to think about your health. And I hope what this video has maybe taught you or increased your knowledge about is that it is likely possible for you to retire earlier than you were initially expecting. A lot of us are on autopilot thinking mid-60s, late 60s, or I'll retire when I qualify for Medicare, or I'll retire when I qualify for Social Security. And having just that very simplistic way of doing things might actually have you retiring later than you need to. Let's make the best of our healthiest years to improve our quality of life, spend more time with the people that we care and love, and enjoy our retirement. So if this video has been helpful for you and you'd like some help looking at your own situation, you can click the link in the description, schedule a free one-on-one consultation. I'd be happy to take a look at your situation and help you put together a retirement plan that gets you retired earlier than what you thought was possible. So until next time, I hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you in the next video.